Horace and the Country Mouse. Summers were hot in Rome, and the summer following the Battle of Philippi was no exception. Horace, a short, stout young man who had fought on the losing side of the battle, now sat cooped up in the city's quaestor's office, mopping the perspiration from his chubby face. For 2,000 years to come, this short, stout, friendly little Roman, by the name of Horace, was to be known and loved for his poems wherever people could read Latin. But in this year 41 B.C., when he was 23, Horace had not yet proved himself a poet. He was only an obscure clerk in the city treasurer's office. That was neither where nor what he wanted to be, but he had no other way to make a living and no other place to go. He would have preferred, on this hot summer day, or any day, to be in the country, in the shade of a green tree, beside a brook. But he had now lost his old country home forever. His father's farm, his own birthplace, south of Rome, had been among those taken away from their rightful owners and handed over in payment to the soldiers who had fought for Octavian. All during the voyage home from Greece, Horace had looked forward to the joy of being home again with his good father on the farm. He pictured the olive orchard, the vineyard on the hillside, the fragrant clover field, the cone-shaped beehives, the sunny garden with its even rows of green, all these dear, beautiful, familiar places. But when Horace had reached Italy, he found his father dead. Everything had changed. A soldier's family was living in their old home on the village street. Another soldier had taken possession of the farm. The village of Venusia and all the surrounding countryside had been turned over to those soldiers who had fought on the winning side in the Battle of Philippi. So here he sat in Rome, mopping his hot face, adding up long columns of figures in the quaestor's office. Probably he ought to be thankful just to be alive and pardoned, since he had fought with Brutus and all the others who had died at Philippi. Horace thought back to the first day when Brutus had arrived in Athens, and how he and all the other young Roman students there at school had greeted him and cheered him as the liberator of their country. How Brutus had roused their enthusiasm until they had all enlisted under him to fight for the cause of the Republic. Brutus had then made him a tribune. Though he had no ambition for a military career, Brutus, to his surprise, had given him a command which put him in charge of 1,000 men. Horace thought again of how some of the lesser officers had begrudged him that rank, looked down upon him, and objected to serving under him because of his lowly birth. "Why should we," he had overheard them saying, "we, who are sons of senators and knights, take orders from one whose father was formerly a slave?" For the father of Horace had been a freedman, a man who had gained his freedom after having been a slave. But Horace was not ashamed of it. Slaves in Roman days were often far finer and more cultured people than their masters, and in Horace's grateful heart there was no one more worthy to be loved and respected than his father. Years later, when the most important people of Rome were to count him among their friends, Horace was to speak of how much he owed to that father who had worked and saved to give his son a good education, as good as any Roman boy could have, even sending him to Athens. In a poem, he was to preserve forever the memory of the Roman schoolboy and his devoted father, who, though poor, he says, passed by the village school at his own door, the school where great tall urchins in a row, sons of great tall centurions, used to go, with slate and satchels on their backs, and took his boy to Rome to learn the arts, which knight or senator to his imparts. Who e'er had seen me, neat and more than neat, with slave behind me in the crowded street, had surely thought a fortune fair and large, 2 generations old, sustained the charge. Himself the true tried guardian of his son, whene'er I went to class, he still made one. He feared not lest one day the world should talk of money thrown away. If, after all, I plied some trade for hire, like him, a tax collector or a crier. No, while my head's unturned, I ne'er shall need to blush for that dear father, or to plead, as men oft plead, 'tis nature's fault, not mine. I came not of a better, worthier line. In this next poem, Horace, who loved life in the country, retells one of Aesop's fables, which he must have read in Greek as a little boy. It is about the town mouse and the country mouse. One day a country mouse, in his poor home, received an ancient friend, a mouse from Rome. The host, though close and careful to a guest, could open still, so now he did his best. He spared not oats nor vetches in his chaps, raisins he brings and nibbled bacon scraps, hoping by very dainties to entice his town-bred guest so delicate and nice, who condescended graciously to touch thing after thing, but never would take much, while he, the owner of the mansion, sate on threshed-out straw and bran and rye-grass ate. At length the townsman cries, "I wonder how you can live here, friend, on this hill's rough brow. Take my advice and leave these ups and downs, this hill and dale for humankind in towns. Come now, go home with me, remember all who live on earth are mortal, great and small. Then take, good sir, your pleasure while you may. Were life so short, 'twere wrong to lose a day." This reasoning made the rustic's head turn round. Forth from his hole he issues with a bound, and they two together make for their mark, in hopes to reach the city during dark. The midnight sky was bending over all, when they set foot within a stately hall, where couches of wrought ivory had been spread, with gorgeous coverlets of Tyrian red. In viands piled up high in baskets lay the relics of a feast of yesterday. The townsman does the honors, lays his guest at ease upon a couch with crimson dressed, then nimbly moves in character of host, and offers in succession boiled and roast. Nay, like a well-trained slave each wish presents, and taste before the tidbits he presents. The guest, rejoicing in his altered fare, assumes in turn a genial diner's air. When hark, a sudden banging of the door, each from his couch is tumbled on the floor. Half dead they scurry round the room, poor things, while the whole house with barking mastiff rings. Then says the rustic, "It may do for you, this life, but I don't like, so adieu. Give me my hole, secure from all alarms. I'll prove that tares and vetches still have charms."